Hello, everyone. Welcome to Vintage Books Live. Tonight, I'm very happy to have Gretchen McLellan here. Gretchen is a picture book and middle grade author, and she has a book called When Your Daddy's a Soldier that just came out in the last few weeks. So we'll start with that one, but she has other books too. So we'll get to some others as well. But Gretchen, I was just going to start out where I usually start out is, can you tell me the story of When Your Daddy's a Soldier?
So I'm assuming that you mean the
Yes.
story behind the story, like the
Yes.
inside story
Yes. The
of,
inside story. Yes.
of how and why I wrote the book.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. So I am a voracious reader and fell in love with picture books when I had kids. Didn't even know that they were out there and was amazed and just fell deeply in love with the entire genre. And one time I was reading a story to my kids. It was a Caldecott Award-winning story by Cynthia Ryland called When I Was Young in the Mountains. And in that story, there's this extraordinary sense of place, time, community, multi-generational relationships, and love. And it hit me that I couldn't relate at all. I grew up in a military family, was constantly moving, didn't know my relatives. And I found that book just it was such a profound read because I wasn't in it. And in a way, it became profound for me because it inspired me to write something of my own where I was. And so what I found was in that read, ironically, was this intense desire to belong and to show where I did belong. But where do you belong if you have no home? There are a lot of people that are asking that question here. You know, the military family is they're known as modern nomads because there is no home. You just go from place to place to place, and often as an adult, you can't even go back and visit the places where you grew up because you no longer, you don't have your ID anymore. So anyway, I read Cynthia Ryland's book and I thought, I'm going to write my own book when I was young in the Army. And so I started collecting images basically of what it was like to be a kid whose parent was in the Army. And when I was growing up, it was predominantly soldier fathers. So I was focused on the father. But, I started with the image of my mom in a military maternity ward having to line up her diaper pail and stand at attention with all the moms in the ward for inspection.
Oh
So I know it's mind blowing, and it is no longer that way. But that is just mind blowing. I remember when my dad had a battalion and my mom was pregnant. The ladies in, all the battalion commanders' wives would make booties for each other's babies, and they weren't blue or pink. They matched the battalion color. So my father had an infantry battalion, so my mother got infantry blue booties for my sister. So anyway, so I messed around with that story when I was young in the Army. And then we were we had 9/11 and we were at war in Afghanistan and we were newly at war in Iraq. It was Veterans Day, and I sat down and this story came out. And, it's an unusual story because it's written in second person, and it's, it's just when your daddy's a soldier like mine, you.
yeah.
So from the voice of a young child, it's asking for recognition, asking to be seen and be heard. And we that's what we want for all children. And we're doing a much better job right now in publishing, in showing a diverse set of voices and experiences. But the military kid still remains largely unseen and unheard.
Yeah.
So it became this thing that I wanted to get their voices heard. So that's kind of the origin of the book.
Yeah. And I know that this did take a long time to get to from one stage to the other, because you said you were writing it, right around 9/11 and before. And so I'm just curious a little bit of the emotion, like what it felt like to finally hold it in your hand and go, oh my gosh, this is a book.
It was pretty fantastic, but it was also bittersweet because the audience, it was bittersweet and also wonderful that not as many people are deployed right now. So the need for the book perhaps is smaller, and it's bittersweet because I would have loved to have had it out earlier for the families who were experiencing multiple.
Unfortunately, in this universe, it probably be needed again. I can't imagine, unfortunately.
No.
I would love for it to not be needed ever, but
no. I've spoken to people in bookstores around this. There are people deployed right now. So there, and the feedback that I'm getting on the book is pretty profound and pretty much that it's saying the right things in the right way.
I'm glad. Do you have a favorite image from the book?
I really don't like favorites.
Okay. Do you have one you especially like?
Yes. Thank you very much. I don't know if anybody else has coined this word, but I call it superlaphobia. I don't like superlatives. I don't want to be asked favorite color, best this, favorite book, all of it. So
I share that with you. So that's why I'm quick to reword it. Because some people are like, this is my favorite. And I'm like, I can't pick just one.
No. And it's favorite for what? For profound emotion, for the beauty of the composition. I have to say, though, what immediately comes to mind is this picture.
Oh.
Where the little boy has heard that his daddy's going to war, and he goes up into his tree fort. And this is his tree fort. And I, in my text, wrote that he went into his fort and cried. Never did I imagine that the fort would be big enough for his father to join him. And that's one of, the mind-blowing things about what E.G. did in this book, is that that's the beauty of having somebody else illustrate your book, that they have a vision and add something to the narrative that you couldn't have added on your own. So I love that.
I was gonna segue into that, as I don't know if a lot of people know this. I know this is one of those little nuts and bolts kind of publishing thing that not everybody's aware of, but most for the audience, most picture book authors are not necessarily also illustrators. There are many who are, but there are many who are not. And in that case, you just send off the words. And I just am always curious about that relationship of, and I think it would be helpful for the audience to just kind of have some understanding of, like, how does that relationship play out, and how do you communicate at least some of what your vision for the book is? How much do you get to communicate? How much gets shared? And then some other moments maybe in that same book of times where the illustrator put something in that you just thought was pretty special.
Yeah, I've worked with now 6 different editors through this editorial process, and it's a little bit different with each editor. But generally, my words go in and we do a few revisions. This book didn't have a whole lot of revisions. And then you wait and wait and wait to find out who the illustrator is going to be. And my experience has been varied. I've been told, here's your illustrator, hope you like her. That did not happen with this book.
Yeah.
It was really important to the editor because she purchased this as an own voices book, which is a term that's used for underrepresented subcultures. And she wanted to make sure that the illustrator also had military family ties. So
Oh,
she showed
wow.
me
That's
fi-
fantastic.
yeah, it is. It was absolutely essential. So she culled through all of these potential illustrators and made sure that they had some kind of military in their family. E.G. Keller's father was a veteran. He wasn't a career military person like my father, and his brother's a Marine. So I was shown 5 different illustrators' portfolios, and I got to pick.
Oh,
That
yeah.
doesn't always
Yes.
happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're shown a couple, sometimes you're oh, this is who we'd like to do this story. What do you think? And you go, yay. And sometimes you get no choice at all.
Right.
But once that's done, then you just wait until you see the first sketches. And that is a mind-blowingly wonderful, exciting moment when you get to see just black and white sketches. As a matter of fact, I got to see sketches of different families, or actually 2 different
Oh,
families. And so
fun.
she showed
Yeah.
a family. It was important to us to have a multiracial family. And so I got to help pick which family. And then I just waited for sketches, and I was absolutely thrilled with the sketches that I saw. So at the sketch stage, sometimes one is brought in for feedback. And sometimes it's like, these are the sketches, and then you start waiting for final art.
Yeah.
And the way that feedback goes is you never talk directly to the illustrator.
Right.
That's an extremely rare thing. I know that that's happening sometimes, but I've never talked directly to an illustrator. So it's basically, I might have feedback that gets to the editor, who probably talks it over with the art director, and then they decide what to pass on to the illustrator.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so it's all filtered.
Yeah.
And I'm very judicious about any feedback that I give, because I really try to build in opportunities for illustrators to create their own stories, because I always learn something from my illustrators about my own story. And that it's said, no book is read the same way twice, or every time somebody reads a book, it's a different book. And I am kind of coming to believe that that the book that the illustrator reads is something somewhat different than the book that I wrote. But maybe what they're reading is something that was not at the surface of my mind, and then they end up learning from it. So it's pretty wonderful.
Yeah. I think that honestly, for me, that's part of the magic of picture books, is that creative interplay between the words that get written and the pictures that get created and how those worlds work together. I love that she had the dad in the treehouse. That, I mean,
Yeah,
that's just really special.
yeah,
That's neat.
yeah. It's beautiful. It's just
Sorry, I'm gonna I have to take my glasses off so I can read what I wrote. Do you
yeah.
have a line that I'm gonna rephrase this a little bit because I'm like, oh, have more fun with it. Is there a line in the book that you enjoy that didn't change a whole lot in the editorial process? And then conversely, is there a line in the book that you can think of that you enjoy that did change quite a bit in that process?
Oh boy.
And if I know that's kind of off the cuff, and so if you can't think of both,
Yeah.
maybe one or the other.
Yeah. Boy, I like so many lines.
I know.
And so many of them.
Well, that's a good sign though, because honestly, I think you have to love it. You know what I mean? You have to, of course, you think they're all great because they are wonderful and you made them and it's awesome.
Yeah, most of them just didn't get changed. One place that I really like when my editors push me because something better always comes out. My first picture book, I remember going through the editorial process, and there was this little note from my editor saying, "This is where you write something really profound." It was like, okay, she wants something to happen here, and I'll see if I can do that. So on one page, I had more than 3 examples. And as we all know, there's this magic of 3. So my editor had asked me to whittle the page down to 3 things, not I don't know, maybe I had 5 or something. And that was really, really, really hard. And I ended up coming up with something new out of that was better than what I had before because I had this focus, and I loved what I came up with. My original manuscript, I have the kids, there's a girl and a boy in the book, and they both send something to their fathers. And the little girl sends her father her favorite shell so he won't forget the sound of their ocean. And originally, I had the little boy wanting to send his father the leaves from their tree because he and daddy loved jumping in those leaves. And I thought, there's got to be something better than that. And I don't even know if you could send leaves. You can't. I looked it up. You can't send leaves anywhere. I mean, unless they're tea leaves or something, they would not make it through customs.
Right.
So I ended up thinking, well, what could somebody carry? What could a father carry in his pocket? He could carry a skipping stone. So I made a whole new scene where the little boy sends his daddy a skipping stone to carry in his pocket. And it's a stone that they found together before his dad was deployed. And they promised to skip it when he comes home. And the little boy says, I don't want daddy to forget. And that was perfect. It was perfect. And that was a revision that the editor just pushed me into it, but she didn't suggest anything. So
those are the best kind of edits though, when you when you don't think you can make it any better, and then there's like somebody says it, they either ask you to do something or they say it in a certain way and you're like, oh wait, I can do that. So that's always fun.
It could be after you're pulling out your hair going,
exactly.
Then something new comes, and it's a great part of the process.
So let's see. I need better glasses.
So were there, I don't know if there was another part of that question. I lost
No,
track.
that was a perfect answer. It was
Yeah.
wonderful.
And at the end of the book,
There's
there, yeah,
skipping the stone. Yeah.
yeah,
I
skipping a
love
stone. But this is a story that I try to create openings for as many stories as possible. And that, the story, I suggested that final illustration. I'm learning to let my illustrators have the last word, rather than my word have the last word.
Yeah.
And we don't know if that's a wish, if that's a dream picture, if the daddy has come home or how he comes home. So for those families who are dealing with PTSD and other, service related disabilities, that holds a place for their stories too, which is very important to me. And it's hard when you have a book that's about something that there are so few books published about, that your story has to carry a lot more weight. It's like everybody wants it to be everything, which it can't be, but I've tried to hold a place for other people's stories within the story.
Yeah. So I'm going to sort of broaden out, because over your shoulder you have your other books that you have. And yay, there's more, but wait, there's more. And I'm curious, so you've been doing this for a few years now, and so you've had lots of chances to be with kids in libraries and schools and all of those wonderful things. And I'm wondering if you have a couple special moments, or maybe start with one, because we're down to our last 10 minutes before Zoom says we're cutting you off. But yeah, maybe start with one, and then if we have time we could do another one of just something special, maybe with this most recent book or with some past book that just really stuck with you.
Well, boy, there are a lot of them. But I have to say that, I was recently up in Goldendale, Washington, having a wonderful time reading stories with kids up there. And I had read No Party Poopers, which is a story about community and inclusion. And I had read I'm Done, which is a story about the meaning of being done, which is hard when you're a writer to know when you're done. Even when it's all published, you still want to change the words sometimes. And then I had also read When Your Daddy's a Soldier. And I asked the kids which book they liked the most. And they said this one, which is very much more emotional and intimate. And one of the surprising things was, I asked them, which picture do you like? And it was this. And in here, this picture is when the father is telling the kids that he is going off to war. And they couldn't really articulate it, but I think it's the child's perspective that E.G. Kelly put into this. You can't
see the adults.
It's just that child's reality of being in this world of giants and things happening to them and them having to respond to it. But he really, E.G. Keller really captured that feeling of being a little kid. And it's like, oh boy, here comes something else. And I love the depth that of the children that responded so much to that picture. That often we buy all these really fun books, and this book has fun in it. But often we kind of try to protect children rather than giving them the tools to negotiate through the complexities of life, and they know the complexities of life.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we're kidding ourselves if we think that
Yes,
childhood is all
absolutely.
innocent. So that was a very interesting experience with those
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah, that's really that. I don't know. I think that that really speaks to I think that also that second person in the narrative also adds to that in when your daddy's a soldier, because it's my daughter recently read a book that was in second person, and she's like, I didn't think I would like it, but she's like, it was the first book I've ever read in second person where I felt seen. Like I felt like I could read second person and not feel weird, because I could relate enough to it that I was okay with it being you.
Mhm.
And I wonder
Mhm.
too if the same, those kids like really resonating with both the images and the fact that it's the second person. But yeah, I do love that image because it centers the kids and not the adults. And
Yeah, and there was
that's really,
um, actually one point where I did push back on the art, and it was in the scene where the family is being reunited and at the airport, and the illustrator had basically cut off the top of the parents' heads to really focus
yeah,
on the experience of being small. And I said, well, really thematically, this is a time where the family is whole. And so I asked if we could see the whole family. I mean, you still
yeah,
have the children from below, but thematically it
yeah,
was
yeah.
important to me.
But it's interesting when you look at that image, like you're still looking up at them,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
so they kept that sort of child's view, even though the whole family's there. So that's fun to see how an illustrator received feedback and kept, changed it, but also kept something of what they were trying to do as well. And so
right.
that's fun to see. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very
So
nice.
yeah, like I get pushed by the illustrator and the editor, and it works both ways. You know,
Yeah,
so there's
yeah,
this fluidity and a very creative process going until the very last page where
yeah, yeah.
you're asked to change your words and you go, oh, I can't. I love those words. And then you change them and you think, I had to change them because of the illustration, but the illustration was where that led my words was better.
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, that's very cool. I
And
love that back
you
and
know,
forth process.
the
So,
other experience that I had around this book is I had stopped off at a bookstore where I had done events in the past, and it had been pre-COVID, and I dropped off my latest couple of books and at the front desk for the bookseller to read. I said, I'm shopping. And then I hear from the cashier's area, that is so true. And I look up, and the bookseller is just wiping her face. I mean, just repeatedly, just wiping tears.
oh, that's so
And
cool.
it turned out her father was a soldier. And we ended up talking for an hour about her
That's neat.
experiences.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
that's very cool.
yeah.
Yay. Well, Zoom is about to kick me off
Oh,
in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. That's
oh,
what we
goodness.
get for doing it for the free one. But really, really quick, do you have anything else in the pipe at the moment that you're allowed to talk about?
You mean something that
Like
might be,
in books?
nothing under
At the
contract that,
Okay.
but I do have a novel that's out on submission and a couple
Yay.
picture books out in
Yeah.
submission. So hopefully I'll be able to
Yay.
say, oh no, I can't say anything, but
Very soon. All right. Thank you so much, Gretchen.
thank you, Christy. It's always
Have a
great
good night.
talking to you.
You too.
Uh-huh.
Good night. Oh, and have a good Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Good night.
It